Hello, good people, and welcome to Hillbilly Cat History, where we're once again diving deep into this phone call between Red West and Elvis. It's a phone call that Red West recorded. Elvis didn't know it was being recorded, although we might find out differently today. And we're going to get into that as soon as we come back from this song. Hi, Gun. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. This is Christina at Midnight.
Slipped out the back with a bullhorn hop over stucco walls where the flashbulbs stop. Joni's got colors, Joe's got the cash, Danny K's in the cockpit, burning jet fuel fast. Sinatra's bird, she's purring like a prayer. Christina's wings cut the desert air. Brad's not on the list, he's pacing the floor, while the collar's got the press in a ballroom wall. Rona's got a sin and a Polaroid grin, but the ring's in a case with the diamonds grinning in. $15 for a license and a lie, while the best men shine with a bullseye tie. Blinded by the flight, wrapped up like a vow in the Vegas night. Blinded by the flight, with a heartbreak hitch in the morning light. Oh, we were flying on a secret stream to a chapel dream, but the brother got burned by the wedding machine. Palm Springs whispers, Bland's got the suit, but the real show's hidden in a velvet beat. Mama's flown in, Daddy's eyes are wide, while the Memphis boys are split on the right. Mitch opens up his velvet chest, bullhead complaints, diamonds in the west. But Red's got a wound that won't sit still, he's shouting down love from the windowsill. Color's got a script and a phantom plan, he's dealing out silence with a sleight of hand. You got too many, he says with a grin. Let go of the love if you wanna win. Blinded by the flight, wrapped up like a vow in the Vegas night. Blinded by the flight, when the heartbreak hits in the morning light. Oh, we were flying on a secret stream to a chapel dream, but the brother got burned by the wedding machine. Christina's wheels kissed the tarmac clean, and the ring was slipped before the world had seen. But love, oh love, it don't run on time, it breaks in the silence, not the headline.
Thank you all for gathering here at Hillbilly Cat History, where we remember together and listen for the echoes. And today we're going to hear more echoes straight from Elvis Presley and Red West as we continue deep into this phone call between the two. So far, we've learned that somebody's recording a call because we're listening to the recorded call, but you can hear all kinds of stuff in the background. We're also learning that Elvis has been involved in some kind of racquetball deal where they were going to open courts all across the country with the name Presley Center Court. And somehow it became Elvis Presley Center Court. And suddenly it went from Elvis Presley Center Courts to Elvis Presley owes $1.3 million for everything that's been built for these courts. And money that's gone out to people like $50,000 as a consulting fee to the president of this company. Some guy that Dr. Nick brought in, and that Joe Esposito was thought okay. We found out that Dr. Nick and Joe They gave Elvis a contract they had never read. And Elvis signed it. And that's how he's on the line for 1.3. But where was his dad? Where was Vernon? Why didn't he stop him? Because Vernon was in the hospital, had a heart attack, had heart issues, wasn't up to the task of looking through every contract at that moment. Elvis trusted his friends, Joe and Dr. Nick. He assumed nothing in there could hurt him. But it said in the contract, he's on the line for the money. Now they've got a mortgage on Graceland. Things are bad. And on the other side of the country, he's got Red West, Sonny West, Dave Hebler. They're holed up in a hotel with Steve Dunleavy, a writer being paid by Rupert Murdoch, the guy who publishes the Star magazine. And all together, Sonny and Red and Dave, they get $50,000 that they get to split between the three of them. Steve Dunleavy, he gets his regular salary. Who knows what that is? They all get 30 days paid in a luxury hotel, as well as extraneous trips, extracurricular activities. We don't know exactly what, although at least one's going to be mentioned on this call. And Rupert, well, he's getting ready to make a whole lot of money because he's the one that's going to sell the rights to publish this book, and he's going to publish it in the Star magazine and sell a whole lot of magazine issues. And that's kind of where we're at the moment. Elvis has extended olive branches over and over to Red, indicating the kingdom's in trouble. You were the first knight. Come back and protect us. Where were you when we needed protecting? Well, Red was employed. Because this whole racquetball thing happened while he was still employed. But as Red said, he and Elvis weren't talking for the last year. Hi, Marion. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. And now let's get back into the Red West and Elvis Presley call.
Well, that's what I figured. This Mike, Don, Nick, everybody else into it. He's getting well.
So Red says, yeah, well, that is what I figured. This Mike, he conned Nick and everybody else into it. That's what Elvis has said. There's this new Mike guy. He's the one that Red knew was going around in Nashville using Elvis Presley's name to get money to fund this thing. So it's not just 1.3 million that Elvis has lost or potentially will lose. It's 1.3 million that's been spent that he owes. It's a whole lot more money that has been collected in his name because people thought he was investing and owned this property. Elvis didn't know Mike was doing that. Red did. Red didn't tell Elvis. And so Red says, yeah, that's what I figured. This Mike guy, he conned Nick and everybody else into it. They did. That is a shame, man. Nick is always, man, I thought he was smart, and I thought Joe was smart. So he's talking about Dr. Nick and Joe Esposito. They're the ones that brought in the Mike and this racquetball deal. They've been suckered. Now, Red was also supposed to protect these guys. Elvis has them all on the crew. Red's the protector. Sonny's the protector. Dave's the protector. All the protection's gone, and the guys are getting beat up back here.
That's a shame, man. Nick's always, man, I thought he was smart. I thought Joe was smart. But not when it comes to business. No. I think we're on a party line. So.
Now, this is another great part. Elvis jumps to Nick and Joe's defense when Red says, I thought Nick and Joe were smart, indicating they're not smart now. He's recognized they're not smart. They got scammed. And Elvis jumps up and says, no, not when it comes to business. That means they are smart in other ways. He's once again jumping to the defense of his friends, which also includes Red. He's willing to jump to Red's defense, and he's telegraphing that to Red every time something comes up about Joe or Nick. He's on their side. We've got to get together about this Mike guy. We've got to close the lines, close the ranks, because this wolf has gotten into the sheepfold, this Mike, and he's tearing things up. And then Red says, I think we are on a party line or something. Now, Pat had mentioned a party line in a previous episode, which is a way that telephones used to work. And it meant that everybody in town was on the same phone line, or everybody on the street, or however they had it set up in that area. But when you picked up your phone line, anybody that was currently using it, well, you could hear their conversation. And you could ask to talk to somebody else on the line, and they might pick up, but then everybody else could hear your conversation. You could ask the operator to dial somebody outside the line, but still everybody on that party line, they're going to be able to hear your conversation. Now, why is Red saying, I think we're on a party line or something? Well, it's because Red can hear a massive amount of noise in the background. And that's what's getting picked up in the recording. These people coughing, there's been dogs barking, there's been a whole lot of dial tones. There's been a lot of picking up and setting down of telephone receivers on these old kind of phones. You can actually hear the bell that's inside them jingle a little bit. You can hear the tone shut off. You can hear the mechanical switch. If you listen really closely, you remember those kind of phones. It's all there. There's somebody that keeps moving around in the background, maybe more than one person. And Red's trying to cover that by saying, oh, hey, we're on a party line or something. I got all this extraneous noise. Well, Elvis hasn't necessarily heard that on his end. Because back in the day, these phones, they weren't great. So if you were too far away from the receiver, there's a good chance it wasn't going to pick it up. All this stuff is kind of away from the receiver, but it's in Red's ear, and it's getting picked up by the microphone of the recording device, which is probably some kind of omnidirectional device. And they're pointing it mostly at the phone receiver, but it's picking up extraneous stuff around it. And Marion says maybe those people who gave their money because of the Presley connection might have felt they were being betrayed as well. Then his name would be connected to that. Oh, absolutely. They've lost this money. Just like Elvis is going to lose his 1.3 million. When Elvis says, do you know how long it would take to turn a profit on 1.3 million? Well, they've spent a lot more than 1.3. They're up at some $4 million plus number. So when are they ever going to turn a profit? Never. These people's money is gone. It's just like Red said, this might con Nick and everybody else. And Red's trying to cover himself. Hey, I'm recording your phone call, Elvis, but I hope that you have not noticed. And Elvis doesn't say anything about it, so he either doesn't notice or he doesn't want Red to understand that he notices. That he's been aware from the moment Red said, oh, I'm just waking up, and there was all this other noise as Red had started the recording device. Maybe Elvis hasn't noticed anything, but let's move forward.
And my whole thing, see, I could never possibly realize they have a profit out of it. I bet it's just a friendship thing. I think it was no harm,
See, at first you're thinking, hey, Elvis is coughing, but that's not Elvis. I don't think it's Red either, but it's loud enough that it completely overshadows the recording, and then you hear Elvis's voice fade back in. And now you hear a chair moving around in the background. Is that Red that's moving around making all that noise? You're wondering, why are these people who know that they're recording, why are they making all this noise?
Yeah. I didn't see it. No, not. Did you see the paper that I signed? Had nothing on it, did you? Yeah. So, my lawyer figures that this shit was put in there after I signed it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because, you know damn well I would sign that's where I was going to stand good for a couple of the racket, $500,000 racket ball. Yeah. That just totally surprised me too. $500,000 for a racket ball? Well, hell, I can get Earl in with a hammer. Albert, right here. Struck one. Woodpeckers on them.
So this is a really interesting passage, but it's almost impossible to hear. So let me read it all out. Hi, Tarzan. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. Tarzan says that he sounds kind of nervous. You mean Red or Elvis? I'm thinking Red, right? But Elvis says, my whole thing, see, is that I would never possibly realize any kind of a profit out of it. And so Elvis did not sign this paperwork for Joe and Nick for this racquetball court in order to make any money. Elvis says, I did it just a friendship thing. He thought they could make some money out of this. And that would make them happy. That's what they were asking for. So he was trying to do that. Elvis says, you know, I didn't think that it would hurt anything. So Elvis is again expressing that he's bewildered and confused about how this even happened. He went into this with the best of intentions. People were supposed to be helped, and now Joe Esposito's mother is about to lose her house. And Elvis says it was no harm, you know, helping these guys get a couple of racquetball clubs. And so Elvis is saying this is small potatoes. I mean, we're going to throw up a couple of racquetball courts. What's the big deal? I didn't think we build stuff all the time. You know, and this has never happened before. And it's not just the courts, though. There's this whole business that's wrapped up into it, which makes this completely different, I think, than anything Elvis has been involved in before. Like, they can build a racquetball court in his backyard, and I don't know if it's done or not at this point in 76, but the only thing that's connected to that is the contractors that you need to build the structure. You're making a deal directly with them. Here, you brought in these other people, salaries are being paid, other people have invested. Suddenly, everything's very complicated. And Elvis says, one here in Nashville, or one here and one in Nashville. So that's one in Memphis and one in Nashville, named after me. And so Elvis is saying, well, they were just going to put my name on it to honor me. I thought it was cool. Elvis says, I didn't see any harm in it. And why would he? And Elvis says, you see, the paper that I signed had nothing of that mentioned. So here we're learning another important detail. We learned before that Dr. Nick and Joe had brought this contract to him. And that somehow none of the three of them, or even Vernon, apparently, when he later reviewed the contract, because he surely must have, nobody saw that Elvis owed this money or that he'd be on the line for this. And Red's saying he could sniff it out, but he didn't actually see the contracts or the pages. And now Elvis is telling us this is a multi-page contract. There is a page I signed. Now, he's not mentioning initials on other pages. That's the way you do it today. You have to initial and a lot of times sign every page so that things like this don't happen, where Elvis is saying the lawyer figures that this was put in after I signed it. So, like, new sheets were inserted into the contract. Perhaps the pages weren't numbered. And then it becomes extremely easy to insert another page. Perhaps there's no mention of total pages anywhere in the contract. Those are things that your lawyer is supposed to help you with, but this seems to have bypassed any lawyers because it came through Dr. Nick and Joe. And so maybe they're not as all dumb as Red was saying they were or thought they were. Maybe this is a much deeper kind of scam, something truly illegal, a fraud. But something that was done so well, Elvis is now trapped. Doesn't look like there's actually a legal way out of it.
For $39.98. Hey, well, they must have gone in for the sauna, the whole health club bed or something. After you can't, it don't cost that much building on damn 2 racquetball courts.
So Elvis has said, because you know darn well I wouldn't sign something where I was going to stand good for a $500,000 each for 2 racquetball courts. And that totally surprised me too. $500,000 for a racquetball court. Now, Elvis is either in the process of getting one built or there's one in his backyard. So he would know how much it costs to build a really nice 2-story racquetball court. You know, one for a rich guy, let alone one that's going to be used by the public. He's thinking it's probably like less than the cost of a tennis court. Can't be sure about that. I mean, there's walls and a roof and stuff now, so. But still, $500,000 a piece. That's like $5 million a piece today. Somewhere between 4.5 and $5 million per racquetball court. Must be pretty nice. And Elvis says, I could get Earl with a hammer. Now, who's he talking about, Earl? That's Earl Pritchett. That's Donna Presley's father. Elvis says, I could get Earl in with a hammer. So Elvis is saying he employs people of skill. He recognizes that Earl has skill. And if he asked Earl to build him a racquetball court, Earl could do it. And it's not going to cost $500,000. And then he says, and Albert right here. So Elvis would double Earl's chances by giving him an assistant. And that's Al Strada. That's Albert. So Al is, because Elvis says Albert right here, I'm kind of wondering if Al Strada is standing next to him as he makes this phone call. Now, it could just mean right here at Graceland. But he inserts the words right here. And then he says, as long as they keep the woodpeckers off of it. Then they both laugh. And I'm thinking this is some kind of inside joke about wood. I'm not really sure what it is. And then Red says, build it for $39.98. So they're sharing another inside joke about the thriftiness of Earl. That Earl knows how to get things done without spending a whole lot of money. I'm fairly certain that's what Red and Elvis are indicating when Red says he could do this for $40. We could build both of these courts. But that also shows you Earl's skill. That Earl's skill's being reflected in these comments. He builds good stuff. And they've both noticed it. And they're confident in his skills. And they are joking somewhat that he's going to be able to build these buildings, obviously. But still, Earl knows what he's doing. And then Red says, well, they must have gone in for a sauna, the whole health club bit, or something. They had to. So Red's bringing in plumbing. There's got to be a lot of plumbing or extra electrical in this building, because otherwise it's basically a room with walls that you hit a ball off of. I mean, there's got to be a few lights, but so now there's got to be a sauna. Maybe there's a hot tub, a whirlpool, a pool. Who knows? He's speculating that there's more here than just a racquetball court, right? And Red says it doesn't cost that much to build 2 racquetball courts. So somehow even Red knows that this cost is spiraled out of control. And Marion says that even Elvis's lawyers didn't see anything wrong with the contract. Didn't they read them to him? So I think they bypassed the lawyers because Dr. Nick and Joe brought it directly to him. Vernon wasn't there to say, oh, wait, Elvis, we got to send this to the lawyers first. Elvis is distracted because Vernon's in the hospital. Elvis is thinking, well, Joe knows all the proper steps. He's already had all this done. Or he's just not thinking about it at all. I think that's how the signature got on there. And I think Elvis may have even read through portions of the contract. I mean, he's not a total fool, right? So the fact that he's bewildered and surprised about how did these passages get into the contract and none of us saw it, it does kind of make it sound like there's some fraud involved. And Marion says $5 million per court. They must be made out of gold. Hi, Luann. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. And then Elvis reveals some more startling details about the court.
I think it's going to be 10 courts each thing. Oh. I mean, 10 places to play like out of Memphis State. Yeah. Well. But still, you take that, you take a man, a woman, and showers. It can't add up no $500,000. That's a lot of money.
So earlier in this phone call, Red has said, hey, we got to get back to my problem. I know you got ripped off on this racquetball thing. We got to get back to my problem. And if we're noticing over the last few minutes of the call, Elvis has skillfully turned this all back to this racquetball court deal. So he's still appealing to Red. Red, the kingdom is in trouble. Red, the sheep are being slaughtered by the wolves. Red, let me keep explaining this to you in detail of how we got ripped off because you're not here to watch for things. Red, somebody has slipped in extra pages into the contract. Are you going to stand for that? What they're doing to me, your friend? And Red's actually getting sucked back up into it because he hasn't interrupted and he's actively talking as Elvis is explaining this, and he's affirming what Elvis is saying, and he's right there listening. He is back into the narrative that Elvis is pushing out, which is the real story of how he's getting ripped off at this moment. And Elvis says, well, I think it's going to be 10 courts in each place. So Red's thinking there's 2 courts, and that's it. There's 2 courts in each place. Can't be $500,000. And he speculated about what else is there. And Elvis is now saying, Red, this is big. 10 courts in each place. That's 20 courts. I mean, 10 places to play, like out of Memphis State. So Elvis refers to Memphis State, which is where he and Red had gone to play racquetball. Red's played racquetball there. Even though he and Elvis have not communicated much during that last year. They still went to some karate practices. Red was still in the background. Red was in proximity. So Red knows what Memphis State, what the courts are like. And Elvis is calling to him to remember. You remember when we used to go play racquetball together? When we were competitive, but not at each other's throats. And then Elvis says, but still you take that and take man and woman showers. It can't add up to no $500,000. So Elvis is saying, but even at this scale, even when we add in the plumbing and the other fixtures, you and I know I'm still getting ripped off. This is still a grand venture. It's something big. It's Elvis Presley scale. And that means that the scam is Elvis Presley scale. Red, are you listening? All of your friends are in trouble. Joe's mom is going to lose her house. And Luann says such a very long conversation on the phone while taping all those minutes. That's true. Elvis makes himself very vulnerable in this call by staying on it so long. He's invested himself into the call. He's really trying to reach Red. Now, Red wants to keep him on the call in order to try to trap him into something, to catch something on tape. And so every second that Elvis stays, it's more dangerous for Elvis. But as we've talked about in the spiritual series, Elvis sees himself as the shepherd of his people. And that includes Red, and the shepherd, he puts his life on the line for his people. So Elvis is risking this one last chance. This will be the last time Red West and Elvis Presley ever speak. They never, ever speak again. It's this conversation. And all throughout it, Elvis has kept asking Red, not outright, but implicitly. He keeps telling him, we're in trouble. I don't blame you, Red. We're in trouble. Everybody was distracted. Nobody had their eye on the ball. It's time to put all that aside. We've got to close rank. And in this moment, Red even agrees. He says, that's a lot of money. Well, let's go on.
Well, shit. I got one built in the back, the one I got. Yeah. That time it was only 80,000. You know how plush it is. Yeah, damn right. Yeah, it's these people just like you said, they saw my signature and went start raving mad. Yeah.
So Elvis says, I got one built here in the back. He's talking about the racquetball court. So he's confirming for us he's already had it built. I wasn't positive on the timeline, but Elvis, he tells us, I've got that building in the back of Graceland right now. He says, I got one built here in the back. You know the one I got. And of course Red knows, right? And he says that one was only $80,000. And you know how plush it is. So Elvis is saying, I went all out. I went crazy with that building. This was Elvis style. This wasn't just anybody's racquetball court in the backyard. $80,000. And people would have looked at that at the time and said, Elvis is stark raving mad because he spent $80,000 on a racquetball court. And now Elvis is saying this industrial complex with these 10 in it that don't have any of the amenities I have, and it's a single story building, somehow they're coming up with $500,000, and it just can't be. And Red agrees with him through all this. He keeps affirming what Elvis is saying. Red, his protector instincts, they do keep sparking and flaring back into life. It's kind of like when you strike a lighter that's almost out of gas. It's got no fuel left in it, just enough to maybe spark up one more time. And that's Red. He keeps sparking and almost catching. And then Elvis says these people, just like It's like you said, they saw my signature and went stark raving mad. Now, when Elvis says, it's like you said, Elvis is saying, Red, you were right. Red, you are correct. Red, I am exalting you at this moment. You had the knowledge that would have saved us. Red, there's still time. And he's saying, you saw the danger. It was my signature. And you saw that they'd gone stark raving mad. And Red says, yeah, yes, sir. He even slips sir in there. I think he just, like, he's fully back in the moment with Elvis. And he says everybody was taken in when they got your signature. When was this guy's darn salary supposed to start? Already? Mike and the secretary and all that? You were supposed to pay for that? But you should get the hell. Red is activated. His protector instinct has caught flame. This is a moment that, again, could have changed all of this. Red, for a moment, he's standing next to Elvis Presley and not against Elvis.
Yes, sir. Just, everybody was taken in after they got your signature. Plus, when was this damn guy's salary supposed to start already? The Mike and the secretary and all that shit. And you're supposed to pay for that. Oh, shit. Oh, shit. Just get the hell. Little cards, little pamphlets, little advertisements, little this and that. And all of them, without my knowledge, without asking me about it. Well, so it just built up into a fucking monster. Right. You're damn right. They're trying to take advantage of it.
So here, Elvis says merchandise things, little cards, little pamphlets, little advertisements, little things, this and that, and all without my knowledge, without asking me about it, So it just built up into a monster. That's all there is to it. So we looked at some of those cards and some of those pamphlets and some of those advertisements, and Dr. Nick showed us some of those little things, this and that. And that's how Elvis got nickel and dimed into 1.3 million, plus the salaries that went towards making those products. And Elvis says he didn't know anything about this. He didn't authorize any of that. He didn't know what they were spending the money on. They were only supposed to be using his name. Why would he know all that? And now there's a monster. I think that's another appeal to Red, the protector. Red, the first night. Red, there's a dragon at the gates. There is a monster. Are you going to do something? And Red, he is fired up at this moment. He is stating all the old Red things. He's the Red who's going to storm into a room and take care of the problem one way or the other. He's going to protect Elvis. It's all right there. But how does it all falls away by the end of the call? So let's keep going.
I don't blame you for getting the hell out of it. But then I guess, all that pressure and everything, lawsuits and everything led up to our demise, whatever. But it was a shock to all of us. Old Dave was out here, he was flat ass broke. Well, we were all broke. Of course, I had some property and stuff. I sold my house. I hated to do that, But when you got to do something, you got to do it. You sold your house? Yeah.
So Marion says, well, hang on, I've lost my chat here. Luann's saying it's not making any sense why they're recording this. And Gunn says she doesn't get why they recorded it either. Well, they were hoping Elvis was going to say something sensationalistic. Something that they could also insert in the book, and then they'd be able to pull out this recording and say, see, he backs it up, and then they'd be able to say everything in the book is true. And Marion says they were friends and knew each other for a long time. It seems to me Elvis wants to check if Red is worth joining the inner circle again, and that takes time. I'd say that's true as well. There's a lot going through Elvis's mind on this phone call. He's trying to reach out. He's trying to reach Red. But he is going to have to make a judgment. If Red were to turn and say, yes, I'll take the deal, then Elvis is going to have to make a decision if he's going to bring him back and how he would do that. So there's definitely testing on both sides going on. And Luann says maybe Elvis recorded Red on his end. That's an interesting thought. Maybe Elvis had a recorder going before he even called. He's not fumbling around with it. He's got possibly Al Strada working it. Of course, we're into deep, wild speculation now. No phone call like that has ever recording has ever surfaced from Elvis's side. But then again, why would it? He wouldn't have released it. He would have kept what was private, private. Now, my gut would tell me that Elvis wouldn't record that kind of call. He'd want to keep it private, but at the same time, this is combat. And you got to change the rules for combat, and he knows that, so he might have. He certainly had the equipment to do it if he wanted it. I mean, if Steve Dunleavy can get it, I'm sure Elvis can. And Marion says that she thinks they wanted to prove that they had to write the book. See how drugged out and out of order he is, and they failed. That's another great observation. If they could have got him truly slurring his words or saying things that make absolutely no sense. But luckily for Elvis, they're doing so much bumbling in the background that whatever they might have been able to pull out, which there is nothing, but because of the quality of the recording, it's terrible. And sometimes people think Elvis sounds like he's slurring on here. But they've got so much extraneous noise going on that they block out a lot of what he's saying. And he's speaking low, and they're not keeping the microphone up to the receiver all the time, so it keeps fading in and out. And Luann says that maybe it's Red recording. Yeah, it is Red recording them, Luann. But is Elvis also recording? He could be. I mean, I've never even thought of that, but there's nothing that would keep him from doing that. And it's possible if he did, that tape still exists at Graceland. We have no idea what are in those Graceland archives. They've got entire buildings of archives. Now, I'm not saying that this does exist there, but who knows? And then Red says, well, Elvis has said that there's a monster and that's all there is to it. And Red says, darn right it did. And they are trying to take advantage of you. I don't blame you for getting the heck out of it. In the flame that has been restruck in Red, it dies at that moment. If it was a lighter, it just completely ran out of fuel because Red immediately shifts gears. And he says, but then I guess that all that pressure and everything, the lawsuits led up to our demise. You know, whatever. So Red is now accusing Elvis of allowing the pressure and the lawsuits, which, you know, Red's behavior led up to Red's demise. And he uses the word demise, not termination, not separation, not firing. This is a demise. Red died when Elvis fired him. Red sees that moment as death. And he's telling Elvis, you killed me. I stood by you all this time and you killed me. Now, Elvis doesn't see that he did it that way, but he does see that Red feels that way. And you can't tell a person that the way they feel is wrong. There's just no arguing that out. People feel the way they feel. And right now, Red is trapped in this perspective where he believes Elvis killed him. And he shrugs it off with, whatever. But he's also probing for information. Was it the lawsuits? Boss, did you fire me because of the lawsuits? Are you trying to tell me that it was this other thing going on? And it really was the money? Because 1.3 million, I mean, maybe you can't afford to pay people anymore. Maybe that's suddenly running through Red's head. Wait a minute, maybe the boss really was going broke. And then Red says, it was a shock to all of us. Old Dave was out here, he was broke. So Dave was in California when they got terminated, is what's being said. Red says Dave was out in California. Well, Elvis knows that because Dave went to one of his California houses and tried to confront Elvis physically. Now, he says he wasn't going to do anything, but he needed to do that nothing in person, which is a very similar pattern that people in human resources see all the time with terminated employees. And typically, if you've terminated an employee and they show back up on the premises, you call the cops because this is not a good situation. Dave did not have hugs and kisses on his mind when he went to see Elvis. But Red is trying to work up some sympathy for Dave. He was broke. Well, why is he broke? Elvis had been paying him regularly. And that's kind of one of the complaints here. You've stopped paying us regularly, and now I'm broke. This just indicates that however much Elvis paid them, they spent it all. They were living hand to mouth. Now, again, I'm not blaming these gentlemen because I think many, many, many people live that way. I think that these guys had a little more than a lot of other people in the society at that moment. And so it was possible for them to budget their spending in a way that they could have saved money, but they were from an environment of no budgeting. Elvis didn't budget. And they emulated Elvis in their actions, and they did not budget. Now, Elvis saw the river of money as a river. It was always flowing, sometimes less, sometimes more, mostly more because he had a lot of revenue streams that kept getting turned on. Sometimes it slacked down a little. Sometimes Vernon got very concerned someone was going to dam up the river. But that had never actually happened. And so Elvis, he's not a guy who's going to collect every drop. But Dave, Red, Sonny, they're very concerned about every drop. They do want to collect the drops, but they don't keep them. They move them on immediately, and that's why they're broke. Same thing's now happening with the book. They're holed up in a hotel. They're each receiving a third of $50,000, but how long will it last? Well, based on their past performance, it's not going to last very long. They're going to spend through it pretty fast. They've already got debts. They've been unemployed for about 90 days. And they got paid for a week of that. So right at 90 days, let's say 3 months. And Red says, well, we were all broke. So Red's trying to say that at the moment they got terminated, they were broke. I don't think that's quite right. But now 90 days later, okay. I don't think there's a lot of people that have the ability to go 90 days without major sacrifices And then Red says, of course, I had some property and stuff. I sold my house. I hated to do that, but when you got to do something, you got to do it. So Red really did have some kind of huge debts of some kind because he sold his house to keep up with whatever this financial pressure was. Seems incredible that within 90 days he could be selling his house. But he did. And even Elvis can't believe it because he says, "You sold your house?" And Gunn says that they didn't tell the truth anyway in their book, making things up. So they really didn't have this phone call. The easiest thing for them then would have been to just go on telling lies. Well, that's a good point. And Gunn saying that getting fired equals being killed. Yes, that is the emotional truth for Red. That's how he really feels about it. His identity was invested in being the protector of Elvis Presley, even though he spent the last year not wanting to do it. And Gunn says these gentlemen had a good boss. And for Red to get a job, he doesn't have to sell us out. Well, let's move forward with what else Red has to say to Elvis. This is what he's been wanting to get to, his problems. Remember, I know my problems, Elvis. We've been talking about your problems.
Yeah, I sold my house, both cars, and everything. And Adler, flat ass broke. Sonny was just down to the. Well, it was a bad time for all, I tell you. Yeah, I guess there's never any real good time. No. Yeah, right. I've been in the hospital long enough to start over. Yeah. But my daddy was lost. My daddy. Yes. Oh yeah.
So we could hear dial tone in the background again. Whoever is sitting next to Red is not doing him any favors on this recording, which is also hilarious. It's kind of a Three Stooges thing going on as they're making this terrible recording about Elvis Presley. Hi, Deborah. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. And Red says, "Oh, yeah, I sold my house, both cars, everything." What does Red owe? Like, why does Red need to sell his house, both cars, and everything in 90 days? That seems just insanity to me. I mean, I've been in hard times and I know about owing people money. And I don't see how things could have risen to this point in 90 days. Surely you didn't need to sell all that stuff just to eat. I mean, now maybe you're paying money on both cars, but that seems insanity as well because Elvis gave people cars. And I'm sure he'd given Red cars. But he said he had to sell them. He had to sell everything. And Red says, and Hebler was flat broke as well. Dave's in the same situation. Again, we can't get on and blame people. We can't get on their back about their financial situations because there's just so many people in America today that are exactly in Dave's situation, that they are totally broke. And they are moving hand to mouth through every week trying to struggle and survive. But these two had great jobs. And they had families to provide for. And somehow everything is falling apart within 90 days. And Red says Sonny was down to the, well, it was a bad time by all, I tell you. What was Sonny down to? So the third guy that's employed by the rich man, he also is absolutely dead broke within 90 days. Now, they must have been broke prior to 90 days because they sold all their stuff already. At least Red did. You know, you can't sell a house in a day most of the time. So again, the timelines are just so incredible here. And Elvis says, well, let's go back to what Red said. He said, it was a bad time by all, I tell you. And this next thing that Elvis says, it really shows the depth of Elvis's thoughts, I think. Because he says, yeah, well, I guess there is never any really good time. And I think he's telling Red, when was I supposed to fire you? During a good time? When would that have been? People don't get terminated during good times, Red. That's not how the thing works. You almost always get terminated during a bad time, especially when it's for cause. And the cause here is you're not talking to the boss. You can't have a job where you don't communicate with your boss. You just can't do it. And then Elvis says, bad time for me too. So here's the combat has begun again. These two men know karate. And Red has struck. Bad time for me. Elvis counters. Bad time for me too. I hadn't been out of the hospital long enough to start rolling. Red's talking about financial matters. Elvis brings his health into it. I was almost dead, Red. You're talking about dollar bills. I was in the hospital, trying to recover. And then he brings in a second point. My daddy. We almost lost him. Now, Red's angry at Vernon because Vernon's the one that fired him. Red is infuriated at Vernon. And so Elvis immediately says, because he knows that bringing up Vernon is going to have that effect on Red, and that there's got to be ground rules if Red's coming back. He's my daddy, regardless of anything else. And he's telling Red that the three of you, when my daddy terminated you, you said and did things that scared my daddy. And I haven't forgotten it yet. And so if we work these things out, this is the number one thing we're going to work out. You don't talk that way to my father. Now, Elvis isn't pushing the issue. He's just saying that my father was sick. I was sick. You needed a loan. These things do not equate. They are not equal. And so Elvis, I think in this moment, his counter strike, it's scored a larger point. But we've got to end it here for today because we've reached the end of another hour. And so we will return to this phone call. There's still more of it to go. We are still learning new things. I feel like we learned a lot this hour. And I'm going to let everybody go with a song. Hi, Manja. I appreciate seeing you here. I don't think I've seen your name in chat before, so welcome. And you're saying that they didn't know what the cost of living was. Elvis paid everything for them. Excellent point. I meant to show you today that check that was on the thumbnail from the other day, and I'll do that in the next video. We can see what Red made per diem, like per day, that doesn't have anything to do with his paycheck. Just the amount he was given to live on in addition to his paycheck. And Marion says they seem to have lived on Bigfoot because they didn't expect to get fired. Yeah, exactly. They were always on the edge of financial collapse because they knew the river was always going to run. They didn't expect to be exiled from the river, even though they stopped paying attention to the guy who owned the river. They just stopped talking to him. It's not just Red, it's Sonny and Dave as well. They're all three were doing this. Red is speaking for all of them, and that's why they're following. But that's the end for today. And this is He Gave Away His Heart. Thank you all so much for coming. I appreciate the time that you spend with me. And you all keep on taking care of business.
Midnight lights, rhinestone fire, Arabian suit, burning with desire. He hit the stage like thunder rolls. Vegas shook and the story unfolds. Charlie's birthday, crowd went wild. He cracked a joke, then sang with style. But just before he sang Hurt So Deep, he stopped the show and made us weep. He gave away his heart, not just a song, diamonds and gold, where the love belongs. Rings and shades from the man backstage. He healed the broken, he lit the flame. Oh, he gave away his heart, and I saw it all that night. Black in hair, the man stepped near. Elvis smiled, the crowd could hear. Thanks to you, we raised the light. 17,000 hearts took flight. Then back behind the velvet door, he gave away a little more. Music ring, a boxcar shine, a suit that held his sacred time. He gave away his heart, not just a song, diamonds and gold, where the love belongs. Rings and shapes from the man backstage. He healed the broken, he lit the flame. Oh, he gave away his heart, and I saw it all that night. He didn't need applause to know his worth. He gave away his soul in Vegas mirth. Not just a king, but something more. A man who knew what hearts were for. Gave away his heart, not just a soul. Pieces of love where the brave belong. Ritual gifts from the man backstage. He saved the hurting, he the flame. Oh, he gave away his heart, and I'll never be the same. I was there, I saw the rings, I saw the light. Gave away his heart, and it burned so bright.